Good evening. I'd like to call the Town Council's special budget work session to order for March 29th at 7 p.m. Could we have a roll call, please?
Councilor Evans? Here. Councilor Kabowski? Here. Councilor Lopez? Councilor Paterna?
Here.
Mayor Pendleton?
Present.
Deputy Mayor King? Councilor Kozakowski?
Here.
Councilor Leidecker?
Here.
Councilor Gamble?
Here.
So this evening, moving on to item number 3 is items for discussion. 3A, General Government Proposed Budget for Fiscal Year 2022-2023. We'll first go with the Town Council presentation. And Mr. Maniscalco, if you'd like to do that, please.
Sure. So the Town Council is on page 16 of your budget book, if you want to switch to there. And with this being the first one, I'm going to try to just go through what we've got here for you. In terms of overall, if you turn to actual page 17, you can see the total Town Council budget is $191,763. It's actually a decrease this year of $3,133.
Does anyone have any questions concerning this department that they'd like to bring up at this time? Councilor Evans.
Apologize, I didn't send a question in advance. I'm just curious if there's a savings from the clerk of the council position having been open, if we anticipate a savings from this fiscal year?
Yeah, so there, in the current fiscal year, you will have funds that are not expended at the end of this year, but you still need to budget for those funds in the next year, because if you have somebody, hired on sooner rather than later, that would, they'd still need to be paid.
Any other questions? So, Mr. Maniscalco, under the operating, there is a reduction of $6,575. What does that consist of? Why is there such a reduction as that much?
Give me a second to find where you're looking. Are you looking, you're looking on the Munis report? This document?
No, I'm actually looking on page 18, where the, what the council approved operating was $10,000, and now you're proposing $3,500. I don't understand why there's such a large reduction there. What is it that has reduced it that much?
To look into it a little further for you, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say most likely it's because you haven't been spending it to that full amount. If you look under that operating materials line item, which is account 00221, that's for business cards, letterhead, miscellaneous engraving, frames, nameplates, florals, and mileage for the council.
That hasn't changed, though, has it? I mean, are these the numbers that are coming?
So the process that we go through in putting together the budget annually every year is that we review your 5-year of actual expenditures versus what's the request. And we did that exact same thing with the council budget this year.
And under the grants, Mr. Maniscalco, we give a grant out of the council's budget to the, where did I read it? It's to the schoolhouse on Ellington Road, is it not?
Schoolhouse on Ellington Road.
Is that where that grant goes?
Yes. You're giving a grant of, in my proposed budget, $4,200.
Okay. And that's the only grant that comes out of the council budget?
No, you have 3. So you have the Greater Hartford Transit District, the Metro Hartford Alliance, and then the South Windsor Historical Society Pleasant Valley Schoolhouse.
I see it right here. And for the Greater Hartford Transit District, why grants and contributions, what is that we give to the transit district? Would that not fall under our mass transit
But that's what that payment is for.
boarding commission?
I believe that is what that payment is for. For what?
So well, that contribution to the Greater Hartford Transit District, because mass transit is a border commission, and do they have their own in all of our boards and commissions?
This is the Greater Hartford Transit
So it's
District,
different?
so it's different.
I see, okay. I see. All right, thank you. Does go ahead.
Just one last one.
Sure.
Mr. Maniscalco, I just have a question about the fees and memberships. If you could just sort of quickly describe the differences between, CROG, the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, League of Cities, and small towns. It all seems sort of duplicative in what why we have to be in all of those
Sure.
different organizations.
Sure. So the Capital Region Council of Governments, we are required to be a member of the Capital Region, of a Council of Governments within the state of Connecticut. There's, I believe, 8 at this point. Those are regional planning agencies. They have both a state function as well as a municipal function. They act as kind of intermediaries in some instances with municipalities and states. And oftentimes, when the federal government issues money to when the federal government comes out with issuances of money that is supposed to be distributed to county governments, they typically, in Connecticut, because we don't have county governments, in an effort to not lose out on those funds, they distribute them through the CROG. So the CROG actually, through CROG. So those funds are distributed a lot of the time for roads and different larger maintenance projects, things of that nature. There's also a lot of plan review activities that occur there, and it's a requirement that we participate in one of those. So those are the fees associated with that. CCM is where we get it's the regional advocacy group for municipalities across the entire state. Additionally, they offer a lot of the trainings that a lot of our employees attend for free as being a participant of that organization. They also conduct a lot of lobbying efforts on behalf of municipalities. So I think you hear a lot about Hold Harmless with ECS funding and other things of that nature. So that's the purpose for them. The National League of Cities is on a more national level. At the federal level, they do a lot of the federal level lobbying for municipalities, and that's in coordination with CCM typically, as well as in coordination with the Council of Small Towns. There is a little bit of an issue going on in the state of Connecticut at this point where the larger cities, for lack of a better term, are kind of gaining a little more persuasion and control of CCM. So a lot of those activities that they are lobbying for in some instances may benefit larger communities rather than smaller towns like ours. So for that reason, we're also a part of the Council of Small Towns, which has actual population size limits to it, to make sure that our needs as a small town are being appropriately represented.
Any other questions, Councilor Evans?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on something that the mayor was asking about, was the operating materials and the difference in budget between the 10,000 down to the 3,500. I'm just curious, I think we probably can manage to work within 3,500. I'm not doubtful of that, but I'm just curious if those numbers were driven down because we were in a pandemic. So we probably didn't have a lot of frames, nameplates, florals, events that we were spending money on. So I'm just curious, like if you look 2 years back, if you say you look at the 5 years versus like the 3 before, I'd be curious to see what those numbers are to see if this year that might change and kind of go back.
My just personal anecdotal experience during the pandemic, I know at the time Councilor Paterno, who was at the time mayor, I believe he probably handed out a number of different proclamations to different organizations and other things. We didn't do them, I believe they were not as public, and there was not as much fanfare occurring because it was difficult to get together, but we still did purchase a number of frames and hand out proclamations as a result, that kind of stuff. But if you want, we can look back and get you the 5-year actuals to take a look at what that is, if you want to.
I think that would be beneficial, and I imagine that we did like meet the need of any events happening, but I would also think that there was less of them because people just weren't holding those events. So we probably did meet the needs, you know, as they came up, but the overall number had decreased at that point. And it's probably not significant, and I'm sure we can work with the 3,500. I would just be curious to know what that number looks like.
No, I would feel more comfortable myself knowing what it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago with normal operations in the world, if we ever get back to
So
normal.
I've got your actual numbers going back to fiscal year 19. You spent $833 in fiscal year 20. You spent $515.
So then I guess I'm comfortable with the 3,500.
We also moved some funds to the professional account because there was more being spent out of that account. So we decreased this one and moved it to better represent what was actually happening.
That's
Thank
what I
you.
was going to ask you about next, was the professional account and the increase in that, because that's 8,600. That's an increase. What does that cover, the professional account, please?
So professional is fees for the annual audit. You have courier services, indexing, food and supplies for the town council, miscellaneous, and then the fee for your cell phones.
But what's driving that increase at 8,600, do we know?
That was to better align it with what your actual expenditures were.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Not seeing any? No? We'll move on to the next department. Yep. And the next department would be the town clerk's department. Miss Bonnie Armstrong. And you're on page what, Bonnie?
I got you, hang on. Page 84.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and councilors. My name is Bonnie Armstrong. I'm the town clerk, and I have been told that's about as brief as I'm supposed to keep it, correct? So, and I'm here to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for the town clerk? Counselor Kowalski?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just curious, the one question I have is under the full-time salaries, the increase was is under 0.5%. I was expecting to see something larger there. I'm just curious as to why that was so small.
The reason it's so small is we actually had someone who left our office, and so we hired someone new. So therefore, there was a salary decrease there. So,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other questions for the town clerk? That's it, you're done. Thank
Oh.
you. That was quick, easy, short, and sweet.
Love it.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank
you
you.
for what you do.
Thank you.
And moving on to the next department, we have the town manager, please.
I believe that's page 51. So my budget moved to a total dollar amount of $258,556, which is an increase of $9,132.
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
$9,132.
Okay. Any questions for the town manager? I guess folks are still looking. No? We're all good?
It's pretty straightforward.
Everybody good? Okay, moving on to the next department.
I believe the next one is the town attorney, which is page 88. The town attorney's budget, we put in for $200,000, which is a $25,000 increase. And I can tell you that that is in an effort to try to balance that budget line item as we have gone over that line item for the last, I believe, 5 years, if not more. So I think as I sent out in one of the emails to all of you about that, we've kind of had an internal debate of is it that you're just going over a line item in the budget, but if you're doing that multiple years over time, at what point are you just under budgeting actually what you need? So that was the purpose for that.
Any questions for the town attorney's budget? Counselor Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know that we expend money on other legal fees, and so where does that fall within the budget? Don't
Other
we-
legal fees, like,
You know, if there's litigation or things like that.
that is all in the town attorney's budget, is $200,000.
That's it?
That's it.
Now that okay, I thought there was more.
That's
buck-
why
I
it
thought there
goes
was more. I
over.
thought there was more buckets that, fed, like, that were all under different.
So if something ends up being covered by our insurance carrier, by Kerma, those legal fees are covered, of course, by them. So as much as we possibly can, we do push off any litigation to Kerma for coverage. But for certain items and cases that come up that Kerma says they will not provide coverage for, those end up coming out of here. So that 200,000 also accounts for any labor attorney issues. So anytime we have personnel or labor issues, that attorney's fees comes out of here. Also, just the general town attorney fees come out of there. So anytime the council has questions about something that might be happening at a council meeting or related to an ordinance or resolution, those fees come out of here as well.
Oh, okay.
Little tip after you say that's it, that's where you shut your light off and you're good. You don't need to know anymore. That's it, we're good. There we go. Counselor Kozakowski.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, so we know that we have some pending lawsuits, and there may be more down the line. You don't know. When our attorneys litigate and do the work that they do to litigate and settle lawsuits, are there ever any budgetary considerations on your end or the town's end where it's like, are we running out of money? Do we want to slow down or anything like that? Or do they litigate as as needed?
No, from my perspective, that's a great question because typically when we do get into some type of a litigious matter, the actual financial aspect of it is pretty much what drives a lot of the decision-making process. And always the cost of what we're actually going to be spending on, legal representation in that process is always typically brought in as a part of that. So that does actually kind of drive a lot of the conversation typically.
Okay. So do you feel like this 200,000 is enough to get us home?
Well, I mean, we can't predict what the future is going to bring, right? So we don't know what this upcoming year may have in store for us. Really, I hate to say it this way, but it could take one instance of something happening and this is just out the window, and we could have just an awful year. Hopefully we don't have that. We've been doing pretty good the last couple of years. We do have some issues at planning and zoning that we are having to expend legal funds for, and those are costing us pretty significantly, as well as some other cases just on the town side that have drawn on for multiple years. The ones that have the one that's drawn on probably the longest is starting to kind of wind down, so that's kind of a good thing. Hopefully we could get that, you know, knocked off at some point. You know, I don't know what's in the future, but I think this is a good place to start, and then we can come back and take a look at it next year when we put our budget together and say, hey, maybe things went down this coming year, and now we can bring it back down, or, you know, maybe we're still far off, you know.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Lydecker?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you just kind of explain a little bit what's driving this up? Is it the monthly retainer where we're using the attorneys through the employees, the council, and getting those opinions and having them be at meetings? Or is it really just the litigation that's driving it? And can we, knowing that I'll let you answer the one question at a time.
No, it's the litigation that's driving it.
And is there a way, like if we're not hitting the monthly retainer caps, can we use some of that towards those litigation costs? Like, can we start negotiating that with the current or potentially new town attorney to kind of offset some of that?
So in conversations that we've had with firms as we've gone forward with the town attorney reviews, part of the conversation is if we were to do a retainer, they want to base it off of past experience of what the previous retainer was for a period of time. And so as what I've thrown out at this point is, can we just keep that retainer set at the same rate for the next 6 months and then revisit what we're actually spending with whomever the town attorney is at that time? So hopefully we can revisit it after 6 months and maybe even bring it down, which should help offset some of those costs associated with litigation. But without actually being able to do that, I don't have anything else that I can, you know, go with at this point.
Thank you. And if I could just address Councilor Kozakowski, to a certain extent with regards to litigation, there's certain things that are strategy-wise that you can not do, but there's also certain things like certain motions that you just have to file, otherwise you could be waiving your certain rights to it. So to a certain extent, a lot of litigation is driven by practice book and what has to come next in the process. So there's not always as much cost savings there as we would like to see. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Evans?
Thank you. Just looking at the bar graph that you have included, it clearly shows we went over 3 years in a row. This year it still shows green. Are we still
We will be
under
over budget.
We will be over budget.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
Just being hopeful.
Any other questions? Not seeing any. Moving on to the next department with his boards and commissions. Mr. Maniscalco?
Yeah, your boards and commissions, I believe, is on page 20. So we have a number of them. We can run through each one individually, I guess, would probably be the easiest way.
So there are no changes, correct, except for one?
Let me just look to make sure. Yeah, the only one I think that we changed was planning and zoning, it looks like.
So why don't we just look at that one, since the rest are all the same? Nothing has changed. Unless the council would like to
Yeah,
go
unless
through
somebody
each
else
board and
is.
commission. Since there is no financial, Councilor Paterno.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Maniscalco, just one question for planning and zoning. I know this year they have to do the plan of conservation and development. Is that cost already built into this budget?
No, the cost for the plan of conservation development is in the big budget. It's not
this-
in their
Not this
commission.
line item, okay.
Yeah, it's not in that line item.
Okay, thank you.
And that's on page 40 is planning and zoning. Or sorry, 39, I think. Yeah, 39. And that just carries an advertising increase of 1,000.
Yeah, the increase in advertising is to keep in line with what they're actually spending, because they've been very active this last year. So as a result, they have to post a lot of legal notices in the newspaper, and, you know, that's what it is. There's no choice. It's a statutory requirement.
Does anyone, Counselor Kozakowski?
Yes, thank you. To that effect, the extra $1,000 would be to cover, you know, legal ads, posting notices and all, and that activity. Considering that the commission just approved a moratorium on residential applications, and they're considering a moratorium on warehouses and terminals, do you think that there might be a less demand for posting requirements?
There might be less demand for some posting requirements. I mean, the moratorium itself for warehouses that they're considering is only for new property. We do have some potential for some redevelopment things that are in the works, so those could still have some requirements that might come through. It might be reduced a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be a whole lot. Additionally, they've got work to do with the plan of conservation development, which is going to require public hearings. So those are going to be, those will have notice requirements. Also, the moratoriums will have public hearings associated with them as well as they go through and review their regs. So those will also have notice requirements. So I think it's going to be there. It might be different, but it's still going to be there.
Any other questions? Counselor Lydecker?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With regards to the inland wetlands, I think they're the second highest budget. According, on page 29, it does look like they're only using about half their budget every year. So is there a reason it still comes in as high as it does?
Let me get to where you are.
Sorry, it's page 29, I was
Yeah.
looking at the bar chart. And I apologize to who the chair is of the Inland Wetlands Commission. They're like cursing me right now.
Yeah, you know, I mean, right now they're pretty much, they're 59.8% spent for the year. So I mean, they're kind of a little behind in terms of being able to spend their entire budget, but I think they'll probably possibly get close.
So am I reading it incorrectly then? Because like fiscal year 2020, it looks like they're maybe at 3,000 actual, but they budgeted for almost a 7,500. And same thing with fiscal year 19, it looks like they were just shy of 4,000, but again, budgeted for the 75, well, let's say 7,500.
No, you're correct. I mean, it seems like they're doing about half to maybe a little bit more. This could just be one of those ones that might have slipped underneath us, but.
So is that just a question we can go back to them on and just kind of see what the actual costs are?
Yeah, I can ask the staff liaison if they believe that they're really gonna need that entire amount, but, and I can get back to you guys if you want.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Not seeing any? And now we have any other questions about any other boards and commissions while we're here? Not seeing any. Moving on to human resources, please.
Okay, human resources on page 55.
And good evening, Vanessa Perry, Assistant Town Manager and Director of HR.
Just for everybody's knowledge, human resources total budget is $281,319. It was a decrease this year of $2,773.
Go ahead, Counselor Kabowski.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just two questions on this one. So I know Mr. Maniscalco answered them in the email, but just for everybody, if they're looking at it. The percentage increase on the full-time salaries jumped higher than I would have expected to see. And I know he's given us the reason, because you just explained the reason for that.
The car allowance was in a different line item. I think it was operating possibly, and we moved it up to the full-time salaries.
Which you can see the decrease there. So it was basically just a flip between the two
Correct.
lines, okay. And then the other item was there, on the professional fees, there was a drop of about $9,000. If you could just let us know what that was?
A drop of, how much did you say, 9,000?
9,000.
Yeah, so we had in there initially through CT Prime, and CROG, it was EDMS. So I have all of our personnel files and everything scanned online, should there ever be a fire or something like that. We have everything there, but that system, we were just told like a week ago that we are no longer going to have access to that service anymore. So now we're gonna switch everything over and utilize Laserfiche, which just got put into place for the rest of the town.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions for Human Resources?
Madam Mayor?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have a question, but I just want to compliment Vanessa and her staff and in the efforts to promote wellness and safety issues. I know you've done a lot of good things with wellness, lunch and learn, and health fairs, although during the pandemic, the health fair wasn't always the same, but I think it's an important step that we take to reduce our healthcare costs for the town, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Questions or comments?
I would follow that up with HR is getting very good at drive-throughs since the pandemic has started for employees.
Okay, not seeing any? Okay, I think we're done with our departments for this evening. There is no, is there any other questions about any of the departments that have been presented? Not hearing or seeing any. Moving on to item number 4 with this executive session, we do not have any. So may I have a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn. And any discussion?
The only, can I add one item before you do adjourn to make sure that for your next meeting, which is March 31st, we'll be reviewing the police department, emergency management, fire marshal, and volunteer fire department budgets. If anybody has any significant questions they want us to look into a little further in depth, please do email them to me so that we could do that research beforehand.
Thank you. And is there, I have a motion on the floor with a second, and all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Not hearing any, the motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful